Hello guys, I am extremely happy to welcome you at my second webinar regarding the performance. Before we kick things off, let me know at the chat whether you can properly hear me and see me. Let me just switch the chat. Can you hear me? Yeah, I have some delay between you actually typing and me seeing the messages, so just give us a few seconds. Hi, Paweł. Okay, already have some information that you can see me. It's fine. So let me know also from which cities you are just joining us. And my name is Mateusz Stefańczyk, and on daily basis I work in the House of Angular as a team leader. In House of Angular, we are just specializing in Angular development, as name suggests, but we are also providing ready-to-operate teams and a bunch of the services like code audits, for example. So if you're struggling with your existing solution or would like to start your new solution the right way, don't hesitate to contact with us. We'll for sure find the perfect solution for us and for your problem as well. Despite of being like the software development company, we are also supporting a lot Angular community. We are supporting open source projects like NGRX, NX, and Gnit. And we are running our own community, which is called Angular Love. Angular Love is the place for all Angular lovers. Initially, it was the blog, but right now we are also organizing a lot of meetups. So make sure to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook as well. So in general, in social media. Recently, we have rewritten our blog for new look and based on the Angular 18. So the project is open source, so you also can take a look at this one. Right now, we are during our second edition of Angular Camp, where we invite some great experts to attend our meetups, share the knowledge with the community. So again, strongly encourage you to follow us. The webinar will be divided into two parts. The first one is the presentation and demo itself, and the second one is the Q&A. But also don't hesitate to drop your questions during my presentation. I will for sure reach all of them by the end. I will track them and so on. So I will try to make sure that all of the questions will be answered. So for now, it's probably it. Let me right now switch to presentation and start the webinar. See you later. We'll discuss how to optimize performance of your Angular application. And this presentation will focus on a few aspects. So first of all, we'll discuss why we even should care about these improvements. Then we'll take a look what it means to care about the improvements, what you should track, what kind of the metrics are important. Then we'll discuss the tools and finally the techniques. At the end, I will provide you with some demo where I pick some random repository from GitHub done in Angular 18. We will measure its performance, and then I will show you how the performance of this app look after making some extremely simple techniques available for everyone instantly. So I will maybe not talk more about myself because I already introduced. What I will add that you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you will have any future questions regarding this presentation or maybe some other related to the Angular, you can directly reach out here to me. Also, as I mentioned, as a House of Angular, we are running our own community, which is called angular.love. I am a contributor and also somehow I help to create and build this community. So again, I strongly encourage you to take a look. Okay, so without taking more time, let's jump to our presentation. Oh, okay. I have one more thing to be announced. Like as a House of Angular and Angular Love, we have been working on an ebook which provides a guide to Angular evolution. And here we just describe how each version of an Angular has been changing over the time. And this ebook has very specific structure, which from my perspective, it's very good in terms of learning and understanding the features. So when we describe the feature, each section contains the challenges, and this challenge section explains what is the challenge, what kind of the challenge particular feature is trying to address. and why it's need to be introduced. Then is describe of the solution of this challenge. And the last section is the benefits, where we describe what are the benefits of applying the particular feature to your application. And all kind of the features from Angular versions are described this way throughout this ebook. Right now you can take a look at the chat. There is a link to download our free book. And right now, for sure, we can jump to presentation. So let's discuss why app performance is important. And I guess that if you are already on this webinar, you are aware that it's important factor, that we should care about this one. And I wouldn't try to convince you. Instead, I would try to use some interesting facts about the performance, how the performance affects user experience, what performance and how performance is considered by Google and how it affects our SEO and rankings. And at the end, we will take a look at the case study from Rakuten, how it affects them conversion rates and revenue. So starting with impact on user experience, the data and analysis shows that 75% of users will abandon buying on our website. Doesn't matter whether we sell the product, services, and so on. If they experience something like freezing, crashing, or taking too long to load our website. So this 75%, it's like the huge amount of the users, and also in terms of the business, it's might be the huge loss for your business if your app is not performant. And it's extremely important, especially if we consider that most of the users right now are the mobile users with various internet connection. And if we are talking about the mobile users, 53% of them will abandon your site if loading takes more than 3 seconds. So 3 seconds is like nothing. We can say it's almost instant, but not for the mobile users. And why it's so small amount of time, we can guess that most of the time mobile users interacting and using some extremely performant applications like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, which are extremely well optimized. And then suddenly they decide, okay, maybe I will buy something. And they search the product and enter your website. And if they do this directly after some of these applications, but even these applications over the time build them habits and feeling what the performant application means, what like the web application means, how it should work, how smooth it should be. So they might have some huge expectations in terms of the user experience, and that's why 3 seconds it's too long for them. And that's why we should extremely care about optimizing our mobile applications. What's more, 85% of mobile users expect sites to load at least as fast as the same application on them desktops, on site, in home, and so on, which might be surprising because the connection mostly in the offices, home, is much more stable than those used on the mobile devices, where even right now, I think like average user around the world have like 3G, between 3G, 4G connection. Some amount maybe have already stable 5G over the entire time interacting with the mobile app. So that's even more underlying the critical aspect of optimizing mobile apps. Okay, and there is like some funny fact that if the mobile users waiting for content to be loaded and it's taking too long, it's creating similar stress for them as watching the horror movie. So we don't want our applications to be to build exactly same feeling as then watching the horrors. But in terms of mobile, the Google adds like another brick to this that first of all, they consider speed and performance as a crucial factor by ranking and indexing your applications. So right now, they measure how fast is your application, and based on that, they consider your SEO and the rankings and how your page being indexed. What more, they are using mobile-first indexing. So the performance of mobile version of the application is critical for SEO. And even we can assume that if your mobile app is pretty well optimized and it's fast, your desktop would be probably the same, but it's not always working the other way, that if the desktop app is pretty fast, the mobile will be as well. There is often the different. So now let's take a look at the conversion rates and revenue Rakuten was able to achieve by improving LCP and VID. So the parameters we'll discuss soon. So the increase in revenue per visitor by 53%, increase in conversion rate by 33%, increase in average order value by 15%, which seems to be pretty huge, increase average time spent about 10%, and reduction in exit rates, so abandoning the site, leaving the site, by 35%. And there is a link to entire case study, so you can read it, what they have done and how they achieve it. They have been doing A/B testing when one site was unoptimized, the second one was optimized, and then have been tracking and measuring them users. Okay, so what are the key performance metrics? There are some metrics which Google cares most about, and by these metrics we can judge, okay, your app is performance, have the good performance, is pretty fast, or have the bad performance. And the first one is LCP, largest contentful paint, and we can simply say that it's tracking how long it takes for the browser to render the biggest content on your application. And everything between 0 to 2.5 seconds is considered a good. Everything above the 4 seconds is considered to be pure. And everything between indicates, okay, there is improvement needed. But if something is pure, it probably says it's definitely is improvement needed. The another factor is CLS, cumulative layout shift. And CLS is the metric which is tracking when the content on our website is not accidentally moving, jumping, and so on. And the very specific way of experiencing the bad CLS behavior is when you read some kind of the article, blog post, you are focused at the middle of the text, and suddenly then there jumps some advertisement and move the content below. So you have been reading, watching something, but it's moved below because we have some advertise. And maybe when I will be discussing about the tools, I will try to show you some bad example of CLS. And regarding the CLS, what's also is it's different in compared to other factors. It's that it's being tracked over the entire time user is interacting with the website. So it's not only during the rendering, but then if user moves over our websites, it's constantly being tracked. Okay, there is like another and the latest one and brand new, would say. So it's interaction to next paint. It's replaced some VID factor. And this one describes the time, how long it takes for the browser or just your application in that from making some interaction and in this interaction taking a part. So if you click some button which should expand the details, it's measured the time, how long it takes for these details to being expanded. If that takes pretty long because you do some heavy math under the hood, then you will receive some bad scoring. But if this reaction for user input will be immediate, then you score high. So it's good. And it's tracking some interactions like clicking with mouse, tapping on a device with touchscreen, and pressing a key on either a physical or on-screen keyboard. So let's move to the tools we will discuss. So the first one is Angular DevTools. And I think like Angular DevTools are very well and good when you're actively developing your applications. You would like to take a look what's going on. The Lighthouse is great both way when we are just working, but when the app is already deployed, similar to the browser plugin. And the speed curve is more like lab tool, which we can use in more advanced cases when our application is already deployed and we need some advanced techniques. So maybe I will show you all of them. This is our application I will show today. Okay, so the DevTools are simply there. I need to run my application. Give me a second because it's not detecting. Okay, we have it. Let me refresh the page. Okay, it cannot show it for the SSR. So, but yeah, you have to trust me that here we can use Angular DevTools. Maybe I can even use it outside of the SSR. So, let's you give me a second. So here is our example application about which I will share you more later. Yeah, but here we have an Angular DevTools. At the Angular DevTools, we can analyze what is the DOM structure of our application. We can also provide some profiler to be analyzed. We can see how our injection tree looks like. So it's pretty good to analyze your application when you're actively working on it. You can see whether you're using the proper directives and so on and so on. So this is the great way to analyzing your application in real time. You can also track what is the change detection, whether it's not triggering too often, but it wouldn't allow you probably to metric the performance of your application when it's being rendered. And an awesome tool for this one is Angular, is the Lighthouse. And as you already mentioned, some of you are using the Lighthouse. So Lighthouse is built-in tool for Google Chrome. You can perform the report of your web page. We can run one to see how it's working. And we have the result that the app is pretty performant. We can improve in the LCP, but rest of the factors seems fine. Also, it provides us with some diagnosis, give us some advices, what we can do to even improve our application. There is even one more tab in the browser called Performance, and here as well you can run profiling. But in the Performance app, the purpose is slightly different, maybe more deeper. So as well, we can see what was the LCP, FCP. We can see what kind of the requests have been performed in our network, at which point our application was. So here we have the frames. Here we also have the information regarding the tasks which have been performed over the time. And this task might be, for example, too long. Also, this tab will indicate for us, okay, this task is too long. If it's take more than 50 milliseconds, probably, it will indicate for us, okay, this task can be improved. And also, I've been mentioning the presentation about the browser plugin, and the browser plugin is called Web Vitals. And what it allows us to do is to check real time how our metrics looks like. And right now I just visit one of the news page in Poland, and I will show you how the cumulative layout shift being tracked over the time. So you see it's like 0.1 right now, so could be better. And let's say I move over this website, and you see something pop up to me. I was immediately moved, and the CLS of this web page is immediately bad. So they definitely need to improve in terms of jumping content, because I was much below or much ahead, I would say. I'm not even sure where I was before this content jumped and immediately moved the entire website, which affects the CLS. And the last tool I would like to say about is Speed Curve. And as I said, Speed Curve is more like lab tool. which is good for already existing projects. It can indicate for us what were our core web vitals on the specific devices, as we consider like what it was on the iPhone 12, what it was on the Firefox, what it is in the Chrome. We can also attach this tool to our CLI project, CI/CD project, so we can track how our application performance changed over the time, whether merging the particular feature didn't affect our performance negatively, for example. So this is great for already existing products, and it's pretty professional, I would say. If you would like to, you can like try the free trial and take a look how it's working under the hood. But also it might provide much more relevant results than, for example, Lighthouse. As I said, for me, Lighthouse said like it's 100. Right now we run it a few seconds ago and it said like 95. And maybe if we will run it during the demo time, it will say even less. We don't know. So it's not stable, especially at localhost. Okay, so right now let's see the common performance issues we might encourage. And I think that there might be even more, and some of you maybe encourage more of them. But the most relevant and the first to be addressed without some really, really big analysis of spending the plenty of hours on your application is identifying the large bundle size. So whether our application after the build is huge or maybe too huge, it has like plenty of unrelevant dependencies, and then it's taking more time to being downloaded and then rendered in the browser. Second factor is unoptimized assets, and here we can provide some techniques by manipulating the rel attribute of the links, indicating to browser how it should proceed with the particular resources to make them available faster and render faster. And also, like the biggest unoptimized assets we can distinguish are probably the images. We'll discuss the images, what is the pretty good way to optimize them. And at the end, we will directly look at the Angular related features, which might help us in terms of optimizing the performance of our application. So as I already said, large bundle size is regarding the size of your application after it's being built and then fetched to the browser, which affects how long it takes to fetch it, especially at the mobile devices when connection might be pretty bad, but app might be pretty big. So we can expect that this will be pretty slow and take time. And to analyze it, there is a tool, or also in the Lighthouse, called Lighthouse Tree Map. And here it's provide us with the feature which allow us to analyze the bundle size of the application. We can even take a look at it based on our demo application. So here you can see all kind of the packages your main bundle contain, a bundle which browser need to fetch to render your application. At the very top, it's the indication of the application side and one very useful tab, which indicate what is the size of unused bytes. And we can see that how much of the specific package is not used by us. And based on that, we can work with the packages and see whether we can somehow extract what we really need from the specific package and just abandon the rest, because we don't need the rest. We only need maybe one specific feature, and sometimes might be even that you will prefer to fork library you depends on, extract from this forked library feature you need, and just put it in your code base or put it in your own library to just don't fetch everything else what is not needed for you. And a good example of such approach is described in my colleague article, regarding which I would say you in the second. But before, I also would like to say about the Source Map Explorer, which is very similar device to Lighthouse Tree Map, but this one we set up in scope of our project. And there is an article I have said about, it's article by David Kostka about the proper way of optimizing your Angular bundle size. Here, David analyzed all kinds of the tools, including the Webpack, which also have some great tool for analyzing the bundle. Here, he also showed how to set up the source map explorer, and based on this, he is making some small case study, some project, how he optimized usage of the font awesome to extract only what's needed, and how it's decreased the bundle size of his application. It was about like 50 kilobytes reduction. So we have to keep in mind that in terms of the performance, each kilobyte, each milliseconds really matters. So, okay, then we move to unoptimized assets. And here we'll talk about the rel attributes, which we can set for our links. Here is an example of pre-connect rel attribute. And on the scale of the time, we can see that without the pre-connect, it's just simply more time for resources to being downloaded than with the pre-connect. And what the pre-connect is actually doing and indicating, it's telling our browser that, hey, I will need the external resources from this specific domain. Let's you set up the entire DNS connection, TCP tree shaking, and so on. Be prepared for the download. So whenever I will actually, and you will actually start downloading it, that you will not waste more time for connecting to this external resource. So we are trying to save the time on the connection between the browser and the specific domain server. And there is like another attribute called preload. And this one is indicating the browser that some particular resources are crucial for our app and are crucial in terms of rendering it properly, providing the smooth and good user experience. And based on that, our browser, in this case, probably the Chrome, will give the highest priority for this resource to being fetched and proceed. So if we identify something like critical CSS, which is always on our landing page, or some JS, which is critical to provide the smooth experience for the user and provide the properly rendered content, we can apply this attribute, and all kind of the requests will be proceed much faster as soon as the browser can start with preloading this content. But that was regarding the links. But as I said in the past, I need to underline how important the images are. And images mostly, I don't say like always, but mostly for most of the apps are the factor of LCP. So they are this biggest content which needs to be rendered, and doesn't matter whether we just sell the products. So probably products have some image, and this image will be the biggest one. If we visit the product details, same images are mostly the biggest one. Sometimes there is like the block of text is the biggest one, but mostly these are images, and we should definitely focus on images optimization. So optimization and what we can do. So first we can start with applying the proper format. And there is dedicated to web format, which is extremely optimized, and it's becoming the standard right now for website images, web application images. It's called WebP. And WebP lossless images are 26% smaller, more or less, in size compared to PNG images. So we can say already that this kind of the image will be fetched much faster because it's smaller, simply like that. And same applies to JPG images. The WebP loss images are 25 to 34% smaller than comparable JPG images at equivalent SIM quality index. So again, we see that we keep the index, and the quality of the image, we are applying only the right format for the image, and we are already gaining. So if your images are currently in the PNG or JPG, you definitely need to move to WebP or AVI format to immediately start seeing the benefits and gain in terms of the performance. The another factor is src set attribute. And src set is an attribute responsible for providing for the browser information which kind or which image it should use at the particular device to provide smooth and the best experience and the best quality image for a particular device. Yeah, and here we can also define some sizes of the images. So based on our example, if I define that if the max width of my device is 600 pixels, let's use the image width, which is 418 pixels. But in scope of SRC set, we defined only three kinds of the images. The small JPG, which is like 500 pixels, medium JPG, which is like 100 width, 1000, and large JPG, which is 1500 width. And we can say, okay, we don't have exactly specific number, but the browser will choose the closest one which fits the specific condition. Yeah. So when our device will have max width like 600 pixels, it will choose small JPG to be rendered. But if the device will have like about 1020 pixels, it will choose medium JPG. And then for rest, it will choose large JPG image. So you can see that using the SRC set, we can define and instruct the browser which kind of the image, which image specifically should be used to provide the smoothest and just the fastest experience for the user. There is no reason to render and send for mobile device some high dimension image, which is not even needed on so small devices, but definitely will take much more time to being rendered and fetched. And in terms of the images, there is, of course, CDN. And using the CDN, we can also save sometimes in terms of the images. If the user will be accessing the images from the closest possible destination for them, we can expect simply that the request and response will be much faster. So that's also worth to consider in terms of improving the performance. Okay, so what kind of the tool we can use to optimize our images? And again, there is like dedicated tool for that called Imagix, and Imagix is paid tool. So again, it's for some bigger business. It's definitely not for maybe your blog post, but still for blog posts, you can use some probably not paid versions. And what we can do with Imagix, we can format and optimize our images using the query parameters, simply like that. So it's not like we have to put in the specific folder or our CDN already optimized images. We can put their images in any specific format, and then using Imagix format service, we can provide some optimizations on these images. And here we can see how it's optimized our image. Let's take a look at him. We indicate that it should have the auto format. It should have the height of 480 pixels and 800 width. And if we take a look at this specific image and the network tab, we can see it's like 25 kilobytes. And if we look, the format will be AVIF of this image. Here, AVIF image. And let's take a look at how this will look like when we decide to remove. It was, what was the number? It was like 25 kilobytes. I expect that if we remove the auto format, let's do it there. Sorry, not this one. It should be bigger. I might be wrong. You can already see it's 86 kilobytes, so about 50 bytes more than it was before applying the optimization. So am I right? No, sorry, it took it from cache property. Yeah, it's 34 kilobytes, so about 10 kilobytes more than it was before optimization. So we already saved like 10 kilobytes on this simple image. Applying the SRC set and more techniques, we'll probably save there even more. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at the images. So right now we can move to Angular related features, but we stay on images. And this feature is ng-optimized image directive. And it's kind of the directive which provides some optimization to the image for us by default by Angular. And they indicate that by applying this kind of the directive on the images, they notice the huge improvement in the LCP in the lab test. So it's definitely worth trying, and it's not big effort to replace like the SRC usage in your application with ng-SRC. And what it's actually doing, it's automatically setting the fetch priority attribute on the image tag, lazy loading other images by default. It's asserting that there are some corresponding pre-connect link tag in the document head. So that's what we set, that it will verify whether we set up the pre-connect for the domain. We're going to set up the DNS and so on. And it's also automatically generating the SRC set attribute. Additionally, it accepts some more inputs, like we can define sizes as an input as well for ng-SRC. So it has like quite a lot of capabilities and do some optimization for us. Other Angular related features is server-side rendering. And server-side rendering in Angular in the recent years, in the recent version, like 3-4 version behind, was some kind of the bottleneck for the framework. And for sure, it was one of the weakest part of the Angular in compared to Next.js and some other frameworks which strongly based on the server-side rendering. But since version 16, the server-side rendering and all related server-side code has been moved to the Angular monorepo, and right now Angular team is taking care of it. Previously, it was Angular Universal, which was managed by the core team, but halfly by the community, and they didn't deliver at all. This package was pretty weak in compared to other. And right now, Angular is strongly focusing on the server-side rendering and providing more and more features to this one. And one of the latest one is provide client hydration. So the hydration in server-side rendering in Angular in the past was called destructive hydration. And it was due to the fact that when the page was rendered on the browser, it was sent back, it was rendered on the server, sent back to the browser rendered it. And when it was processing the hydration process, it had to destroy it and recreate from scratch. So we have been doing the rendering again. Right now, we've provide client hydration. This issue disappears, what positively affect all kind of the metrics because there is no flick, there is no destroy and recreation. Angular also have the static site generation like SSG, which which can be used for some cases, some applications like blog posts and so on, when our content is mostly static and it's not changing too often over the time. It's like the great solution. And something between middle is incremental static regeneration. So it's working this way that we are making the statics SSG. But when we know that something has changed, browser will cache all our results for our application. But when we know that, okay, content has changed, let's you just regenerate my page again using the new data, then this page will be regenerated, including this new kind of the data and affecting it for the user. So we keep user updated and don't showing some outdated pages. In more details, you can read it on the Angular blog. Here is a link. Okay. Right now we can move to Angular related features. And Angular recently introduced add syntax, which we can say provide only the decoration over the existing syntax like ng4, ngif, and we right now using some template language to perform exactly same things we have been doing using directives. And that's how it might look at the first look. But when we take a look slightly deeper and compare how performant is Angular version 17 using ng4 and using the new syntax, we can see that in terms of swapping the rows, the Angular with exactly same version is much more performant than the same version of Angular using ng4. And here, what's happened is under the hood, the comparing algorithm of the rows has changed, and it provides this kind of the big improvement. So it's also worth to keep your projects updated, being close to the most recent version, and just apply this kind to apply easy updates when it's possible. And another feature which might positively affect our application performance, and here I mean especially bundle size, is defer block. So defer block allow us to lazy load the content on demand using some specific for our use case conditions. So what we had recently in Angular was lazy loading through the routing. So we could lazy load stuff when user visits specific route, specific path. If he accesses this path, let's lazy load things I need in scope of this path. Using the defer block, you can go even one step further, and you can say, let's you lazy load this small part of my view only when something happened. And here, for example, I'll define that I only want to lazy load my heavy component when it's became visible in the viewport. Otherwise, don't include it in my bundle size, don't increase my bundle size. I don't need it initially. I know that it's probably at the very bottom of the page or something like that, and I can lazy load it later. Okay, right now we can move to our demo. So what I have done, I simply, because I was thinking like whether I should create a brand new application, try to make it not performant and so on, but it's pretty big effort. And I also wanted to challenge by something what was created by someone else. So I found some repository on the GitHub. It's Gantan-Angular SSR. It's a server-side rendering application in Angular 18, and I decided that I will apply some performance, small steps, really small steps. So nothing big, would say, something you can do instantly, and we'll see how it can affect your application performance. So first of all, let's us check out to the master branch. We can see that by default, app had pre-render applied. Let's comment it because that's not what we would like to measure right now. And let's start to run the build over our application. Okay, application seems to be built. Right now, let's serve it. Okay, so I can access my app under the port. You can see it's mostly exactly same app I have been showing you there with this score. It's post optimizations. And here what we can see, there are some channels. I choose it because, okay, when I visit this page, I already know, okay, there is like a lot of images. So probably there might be some problems with them. So let's run the analysis. But this data and assets are pretty static, fetched from the local host. So as you can see, it performs pretty well, surprisingly. Let me do it one more time. Yeah, as you see. So the performance, I need to like reset cache. So we can see that there is some small problem with LCP, there is problem with CLS, FCP, and other metrics would say are pretty well. Overall, these metrics are well, would say. There are not bad metrics, but also be honest that the app is static. This data is not real, it's not fetched throughout the backend. Also, we can explore there what was the reason and what might cause the LCP issues. So if we click like here LCP, FCP, we can see the diagnosis for specific cases, and we see, okay, in LCP, this image was some kind of the problem. And right now, let's try to move to my branch. Where I provide some optimizations. Hopefully it wouldn't score even worse. That might be the case with Lighthouse. As I showed you when I have been running it before the webinar, it was like 100. So 100 is pretty more than 75%, but let's give it a try, what it will be right now. We'll run it twice as well. Yeah, we'll probably don't have to. So you can see already that I have like 100 on my application. The LCP decreased to 0.7. CLS is removed. And there is no issues. Let's take a look at the LCP. There is no issue with this image. And this image is one properly formatted using the images with the AVIF format. The previous one was JPG format. And if we go right now to the code, let's take a look what were the simply improvements I have done, because really, guys, there is like nothing extra. And simply by these improvements, you can expect some nice results. So first of all, what I have done, I have removed zone.js. So as you know, since version 18, we can use zoneless applications. And it saves us about 30 kilobytes in the bundle size, thanks for what our application can render much faster. Then I replace all of the SRC occurrence with ng-src directive, which provides us the optimized images for our applications. Here is an example of using the experimental zoneless change detection. Also, I have used probably on push change detection, I have used the new for loop. As you can see, in compared to old ng4, I replace everything with the for loop. But as I said, it shouldn't have big impact on the rendering process. It might have the impact when you then play with your tables, with your rows, and so on. But there is like one more very important change. You can see that my image is in the AVIF format. It's something you will probably not find in the Angular documentation, but you can apply some compression module for your server. And thanks to that, your builded application will be compressed to gzip, which dramatically decrease the size of the final bundle size. And this will be sent to the browser much faster, and which will be much faster rendered and proceed. So we simply compress the bundle size of our app, make it smaller, and it gives us the gain in the performance of initial rendering of the application. So there is a compression module from compression package for Node, and we can apply it server.use. So what I have simply done, I have applied the ng-src, I have applied the compression, I have applied new syntax, but it shouldn't affect the initial loading. I have provided optimized images from Imagix using the FIF format, AVIF, and I just provide the link to pre-connect for my external resources. So like 5 small improvements, and we gain to be about 100% in the Lighthouse. This repository also will be available for you. Soon there will be a link on the chat, so you can fetch it, take a look at these changes, and reach out to me if you're interested on any specific change or you would like to discuss it. So let me know. I am for you on the Twitter and LinkedIn. Okay, so that's probably it. We can simply move to the Q&A. The Q&A, I saw some questions. There was one from Ankit, and yeah, you are asking like whether I can tell the scope of Angular and the cache issues in the Angular, but you will need to provide me more context, since be honest, I'm not sure what you mean. Like what is specifically the question? So, and that was mostly the single one I saw. So, guys, if you have any kind of the questions, right now is the time to ask. I am here to answer any of them. We can also discuss, I don't know, maybe you have some questions about the partial hydration, which was recently announced. I haven't mentioned it in the presentation, but also it will be the great improvement in terms of the performance. But we need to wait. Yes, it's React is more used than Angular. It's maybe more popular than Angular is. Okay, so we have the question from Nikola Krstic. Do you use any tools to purge unused CSN in Angular? Yes, I used to use some pure CSS, some kind of the plugin to the Webpack and Tailwind probably. They are often very connected. So that was the one I have been using, but it was working fine for me when I was in the project when I had pure Tailwind and this package, pure CSS. Let me take a look, something like that. Yeah, it's called pure CSS. Purge, maybe. Give me a second. Yes, Purge. That one. I will send you a link. But it was tough to me to how to like set up it in the scenario when I had the Tailwind material and this plugin. So yeah, but this is definitely the way to go in terms of pure unused CSS. Okay, we have another question, like how to optimize scheduler in Angular with 1,000 of employees with 10,000 of events. And honestly, this is kind of very specific question. And so, as I mentioned, we have these free consultations which you can assign to and so on. So I will strongly encourage you, because like guys, it's pretty tough to say ahead how I can or how you can optimize specifically your case. We'll need to take a look at actually at the code, because also what I have showed you, there were some kind of the best practices which might affect your time of rendering and this kind of the performance. But if you have the performance issue with actually rendered application where you scroll your table or something like that, that might be completely different set of the techniques you need to apply. Yeah, so for sure you need to make sure that you are using, for example, virtual scroll. You need to make sure that you are using on push change detection. You can also optimize the way you're iterating over the items and so on, so on. So there is a lot of reasons why this specific case you provided to us might not be well optimized. And also, if you would like to, you can just reach out to me on the Twitter, LinkedIn, and I will really try to help you even there. There is the question whether when we build the new apps nowadays, should we think as a surface, how to make decisions, should the site before creating an app? I was using only client-side rendering. To be honest, there is a lot of hype right now about the SSR. It has its renaissance as well as Angular, I would say, especially in the Angular community, because in some other frameworks like Next, they are specializing in the server-side rendering from years. Right now, we have some kind of the hype in Angular since they start delivering really valuable features for the SSR and make it somehow a priority for them. But the case whether you should go SSR or not is really depends of your application, actually, because if your app is always hidden behind some kind of the registration or just login and it's used somehow internally, there you might not gain a lot from the server-side rendering, to be honest. Yeah, so server-side rendering applies to some specific kind of the applications, very often for publicly accessible, like some kind of the e-commerce, when you really need to score well in the Google index and so on, so on. Yeah, but if your app is more like the business one, use it somehow and somewhere internally hidden behind the login and so on, you might not gain so much from SSR, and maybe you shouldn't like focus on it that much, because you will gain more value and provide like more business benefits for your clients, focusing on the client side rendering, and just deliver best practices we can do in the client side based application. So it's not like we should always go with SSR. Also, like there might be very simple SSR, you know, but when you use SSR, you also always have to remember to avoid using the window and so on, because window is not present on the server. Pavel asked whether I could elaborate a bit more on SSR, SSG, and ISR. Yeah, so SSR was like the entire presentation was about the SSR. SSG is just a great fit, as I said, for things that are relatively static and don't change often. So for example, where we have the blog or some landing page application, we can just render it in the statically and then just provide using some platform like Cloudflare and so on. So it's great fit. We also had some kind of the business use case. We have been thinking of like using the SSG for the page with the products, which maybe don't change too often, but also there is like plenty of these products. And really, if something change, you SSG like 1,000 records, and these changes occur a few times per day. Maybe the quantity might change when people are buying, but if you statically render the quantity on the product page, it will need to change as well. It will be pretty big effort to, you know, somehow manage and re-render again. So yeah, it's also like to be discussed, but might be pretty tough. And about the ISR, it's some hybrid between, but also I saw the awesome article about the incremental static regeneration from Enea. He described it here pretty well and provide a package from RX Angular. So I think it will be more value for you when you just read it and then take a look, because it's pretty well described. And ISR is kind of the SSR with the static kind of the regeneration, when you just rendering, when you just revalidate your data after specific conditions. Yeah, so it might be rendered and displayed statically, but also you might revalidate and re-render the content based on some kind of the conditions, time, and so on. I send you the link to the article. I can send the link and test account so you can have more context. Okay, you can like send it to me on LinkedIn. I will try to help you. Hi, I work in an industrial application with a lot of API requests and live subscriptions. I have REST in combination with Signal, RC, gRPC backend services. Do you have any tips on improving in such apps? To be honest, we'll need to think slightly longer, or just really put my hands on this project a little bit to really say you ahead what kind of the optimizations you might apply for this particular case. Also, it will be useful if you say with what kind of the problems right now you are struggling, like whether this communication with these services in real time is pretty slow, or your application is lagging from some reason, and so on. Because Otherwise, it's pretty tough for me to say what might be wrong, yeah, because normally the protocols should be pretty fast, requests should be pretty well optimized. Maybe you're just sending too much data and so on. So guys, as you see, that there might be like plenty of reasons why something is slow, yeah. Maybe you send like very huge amount of data which is not needed on this particular page, and a lot of more things. Micro frontend architecture is a good per your experience. No, I haven't used the micro frontend architecture in real life in any project, and I am a big fan of monorepo applications, and I usually work with NX monorepo, even if I have the single application, because I love kind of the benefits they provide. Also, all of these benefits like defining the boundaries, so what kind of the domain can depends on the other domain, was initially only on the NX. Right now, I saw that Manfred release. It was some time ago, but they are continuously improving this package called Sheriff and Detective. So you can even get this restriction of boundaries in your architecture using these packages. It was called Sheriff and Detective for sure. And the micro frontend, I feel like it's really heavy fit for really specific use case, but this use case is pretty rare. I in my experience, yeah. So I mostly works really with kind of the business applications where we are working as a, for example, single team or just two teams, but well defined and divided into single applications, that we don't have this need of like completely different two front-end application being displayed at the single place, because it's always like somehow this micro frontends need to be synchronized and so on. So seems like a lot of work. I was playing around locally with that one, but never have been using it commercially, and have no experience how it's scale, how it's easy to maintain then, and so on. So we will really need to hear from someone who have done in real life something big with micro frontends. What about RX subscriptions and memory management? How much would it affect the performance? So it might affect it much. But as I said, I mostly focus on the performance during the rendering, but the subscriptions and memory leak just damage and harm your application during the user interaction. Yeah, so that's what I said. If you are just scrolling 1000 events in your calendar and you maybe have some memory leak, or you don't use the virtual scroll, so you at the same time have in the DOM like 1000 rows and much more, it can definitely affect negatively your performance. And the tooling I showed, like analyzing what's going on during specific time in your application, so what kind of the task being performed when you scrolling and so on, might be the good insight for you, what's going on, where is the problem, and so on. So yeah, but definitely. There is question how to handle translation properly for SSR, and it's like better. So in our case, we didn't have any issues. We have been using Transloco, and it was pretty fine. So let us know how you have been doing it and what kind of the problems you set. Hello, do you use some library for icons? We are using Spriteway and looking for separate loading for each icon. This is pretty common scenario, like separating the loading of the particular icon only when it's needed. And it's very good practice. And we are using font awesome probably in most cases, and have some custom solution also to not load it when it's not used. What's your idea in micro frontend architecture against a library structure to manage big applications? So I think, guys, I already answered slightly this question, but also in the future, in the next month, I will have the webinar about the architecture. So I think we can touch there the topic of micro frontends, monolith applications, and so on. So also feel free to leave us with some feedback in the survey, which will be at the end of the event, with some maybe ideas of the topics you would like me to touch during this webinar. Is there any good web browser plugin to debug RxJS? To be honest, I'm not sure. It will be pretty interesting and helpful. Haven't used anything like that. So guys, if anyone knows some good plugin to debug RxJS or just search for memory leaks, let us know. Is it worth to learning NGRX? Yes, I believe it's worth it, and it's one of the state management and probably the single one I am mostly using. Yeah, so have been working for most of my career with NGRX, have been working with NGXS, and it was pretty nice, distinguished, and something new in compared to NGRX. So I love both of them, but right now with the Signal Store, NGRX is my favorite state management library. If I am working on micro frontend, how can a client use my code to add their code as per their requirements, but doesn't impact my code? That would be the best approach of doing this. Let me think of. Yeah. Pretty tough question, to be honest. Isn't an idea of micro frontend itself to just create self-independent teams, and that's how it should work, like that someone is not affecting your work, is not impacting your code, and so on. Yeah, so that's how I see it. It should work as a micro frontend. So you have your piece of the micro frontend you're just taking care of. Someone else at the same page have maybe some different piece of the micro frontends. You might have some contract how these micro frontends talk to each other, but specifically you should have the possibility to work independently without affecting each other. That's how I see it. But how to create a code that someone else can touch without impacting it and so on, you will need to wrap your code as a packages, for example, and let them use these packages and somehow maybe, I don't know, extend these packages without possibility of just impacting them. That's how I see it. Yeah, I don't understand your scenario perfectly. Yeah, whether your package is the card component, button component, calendar, some calculator they want to display, and just do something what this calculator put outside of it. We need to specifically understand your case, like how they can use it and don't impact your code. Do you have any tips when we need to load lots of static images and icons in our apps? Any lib or something that can reduce sending requests to a server to load them one by one? I don't know whether it's specifically some helpful scenario to don't load them one by one, but as I showed with the defer block, it might be that you will not render all of them at the very beginning, but you will more definitely load them when they are really needed. Yeah. So if you properly wrap your components with kind of the defer blocks, and they will not be initialized when they are not needed, that should decrease the size and the needs for static images and icons. The second one is really ImageX or some other service for optimizing the image for specific scale and so on. This really can make a thing. So Those are the two main things I can think of. So provide the proper optimization of the images. Okay, my battery is going down. And also, what I said? Reduce the need of displaying them when they are not needed with defer block. Then you can apply, of course, NGSRC directive, which will help you with saying whether the image should be prefetched or maybe should be fetched when it's already needed. Also, you can define the SRC set so that the specific size of the image will be fetched for the particular device, not always the same images. So those are the three main techniques, and then I will need to deep dive deeper. What is the easiest way to unsubscribe in your experience? So right now, when possible, I will use async in the template, which is pretty rare when I start working with the signals. And the second one is take until destroyed. That's how I do it. Why I should prefer use NGRX over my own service? Because it's provide a lot of abstraction above, like selectors are already optimized with memoization and so on, and you have it by default. But also, yeah, that's in general, like they provide a lot of benefits, a lot of best practices, even though you need to implement, and they cover it with some optimizations above. And also, it's huge topic, would say, because if you're working in the team, so if you write some services with a lot of RxJS, I know that RxJS might be really extremely tough to understand, even for pretty experienced users, when you hide there some kind of the business logic and so on and so on. I believe NGRX simplify managing the business logic. Depends on which state you, of course, use and how you arrange it, because it's not like library will do everything for you, but it's some kind of the standard. And a lot of developers around the world knows the standard and the way it's work. But if you create the custom solutions, so the one who really know how it works is you, and that's often is a problem for the projects. Let me maybe divide it slightly to secure my battery. If we use defer in SSR, is it affected in terms of CO? Depends what you defer, but from that what I know, in defer in SSR so far was working that it was displaying the placeholder. Actually, something like that. For sure, it was not working pretty same as the client-side rendering, but right now with the partial hydration, you should not have any impact in terms of the CO. It might affect the CO if you defer, let's say, the meta tags, which are important for your CEO, for example. Yeah, so we always need to choose properly. I saw someone said he's working with Akita, and Akita in the past, yeah, I used to use it as well. Pretty nice state management, but recently don't hear anything about it. So you can let us know how it states right now. When do I consider a new Angular feature ready for commercial use in production? So I have to say, I slightly, if I see that it's stable over the time it's work, there is no really big explosion whenever you start using it. We simply adopt the features to the commercial use. So depends by the case by case. Also, if something is really reverted or just deprecated, which is not pretty often, yeah, experimental developer preview stable. Yeah, the preview is good for me. If it's really will provide me with big benefits, I will even use the experimental. To be honest, yeah, I know it might sounds like the risky, but also it depends of your really use case and production and so on, because if you make it in the really some kind of the sensitive part of your application, so wouldn't do that, like to take a risk in this kind of scenario. But if it's not, it's something like take until destroy, which seems to be pretty stable from very beginning, or some other features, I will use them right now. Yeah, so guys, these specific cases, let you ask me on the private, because I will need to deep dive much more with you into this specific scenario. I don't feel like I can provide you with suitable answer for your specific use case without really just seeing it. Depends, yeah, because it's somehow kept. Whether it should affect your performance, not sure. Might be that it will affect, but also I saw like a lot of people have been building. I don't remember the pattern specifically, but kind of the store where they have been preserving, for example, the previous data, let's say the product and the product details. And when you leave the page and re-enter, they use the old data from the store, which they didn't destroy. And in the background, they fetch the new one. I have been replacing that data with new one. But user had the immediate experience of already seeing the product he visited in the past. So I saw these practices. So maybe it's not that big problem of keeping the much data in a NGRX store. Also, this data will disappear whenever you, I don't know, refresh the page, move between the pages, make the request, and so on. So also we need to see what specifically you mean. Okay, guys, so I see that will be all from the Q&A session. I'm really thankful that you have been so proactive in terms of the Q&A. I hope I was providing you with valuable answers. Those specific cases which I said I was not able to answer, I'm really sorry, but it's really like that in the programming, that sometimes we need more context, we need to better understand your problem. Even in daily basis, we discuss the simple bugs in the teams. So what I can say about the huge application, for example, just like that, I have mentioned like best practices I know. By the end, I would like to ask you to fill our survey, which we will send you at the chat. I remind you about the free consultations, and what's more, see you on the next webinar about the architecture, and have a nice evening and day for those who start them day. In Poland, it's already evening. We are about to 8 p.m. right now. So goodbye and see you next time. Bye-bye.